going on there, and I think we'll be picking up on some of those themes when we hear from Africa Bridge and W2O Foundation later on as well. So before we go into questions, we've got one more speaker who's going to be speaking via video today, but he'll be joining us on live stream for the Q&A panel afterwards, and that is Richard Gordon, the Director of the Board of University Disaster Management Centre. So I'm going to go to video virtually.
Management Centre. I've just got these few moments. I want to share some slides with you, and then I will come online and answer any questions you have. In this slide, I'm basically showing that our Disaster Management Centre has had quite a global reach. We've worked right across Asia, Africa, North America, the Caribbean, and even down as far as Australia. We actually did spend quite a lot of time in the former Yugoslavia, after the Civil War, as we discovered that disaster management actually brought warring parties together in a very unique way. You'll see on this slide that we've been to Nigeria over 30 times. We've worked in Abuja, the capital, in Lagos, right up in the north in Katsina and Sokoto, as well as in Port Harcourt. So we have been around extensively. We have worked very closely with the military in Nigeria, with the Armed Forces Staff College in Jaji, and also the Defence College in Abuja. And working with the military has been a very valuable experience in Nigeria, because the military and the civilian agencies learning together, working together, is a very powerful thing. And I will come back to that later on. In this slide, I'm just simply reminding us that in every government, there are senior leaders, presidents, prime ministers with ministries, and each ministry having the chief minister. And one of the issues of government and risk reduction in any country is to consider which minister or ministry is ultimately accountable for reducing the risk of a particular hazard. And we often get our students to think about, for example, a pandemic. And they will immediately say, well, obviously it's the Ministry of Health that should be accountable for reducing the risk of a pandemic. And whilst that may well be true, there are multiple ministries who have a responsibility to support that particular minister. So the Minister of Transport is bringing people in and taking them out. The Minister of the Interior is checking them as they go through customs barriers and so on. And the Ministry of Tourism is actively engaging people to come to the country. And so other ministries need to support the one that is ultimately accountable. And these other ministries are responsible. And there will be many people who need to be consulted and informed. In this slide, I'm making a very simple point. On the bottom right, you'll see these four quadrants. The bottom right is best practice. One of the things we teach in the master's course and our professional courses is that whilst best practice is obviously popular with everyone, because if I have a standard operating procedure and it doesn't work, it's not my fault. Everybody likes standard operating procedures. But in crises and disasters, I would challenge anyone to come up with a set of procedures that envisages every possible event. So we've got to create leaders who understand good practice, emergent practice, and sometimes novel practice because of the chaos that's going on around them during the crisis. And this is something which we ensure all our master students and our professional practitioners are really clear on, not to be fixated about standard operating procedures. You'll see in this slide that the resilience cycle, which is a very well-known and common cycle used across the world, but I've highlighted here two bubbles that have been added recently to the resilience cycle. And you might ask, why only recently? So yes, we will assess, prevent, and prepare. But between preparing for a crisis and responding, we should be validating and assuring. In other words, will our plans work? Will our equipment work? Do our teams know what to do? So a vital part of our masters and our training in any country is to ensure that organizations, both private sector and public sector, validate and assure their plans and learn and improve afterwards. Now, decision making in any country at the national level, and of course the 36 states of Nigeria and the Federal Capital Territories, it's vital that the politicians and the senior civil servants at the top level, these are the sorts of things that they'll be thinking about. How quickly can we get back to day-to-day national life? What is the wider strategic picture? What national intelligence can we provide to this situation? Is there emergency legislation? These are sorts of issues of national and state governments. They are not disaster managers. And so what we are seeking to do in our master's course is to train our students and to train our professional practitioners how to serve our political masters, to give them the right information, to give them the right advice for their decisions in responding to a crisis. And in this slide, you'll see there are many models that Nigeria would have been introduced to from multiple countries. Nigeria has many friends who've come in to provide advice. But I am absolutely seized by the fact there is no single model that is right for Nigeria. And in this short video clip, when we were stood alongside a former director of disaster management, Director General of Disaster Management in Nigeria, we stood up to say this very, very point. You might like just to watch this quick little video.
I'm glad to announce to you that we have brought in experts, years of experience working both in the United Kingdom and overseas to support government and multinational organizations with disaster and crisis preparedness, response, and recovery for this high-level seminar. Participants will be better prepared to face up to both new and emerging disaster challenges in their various areas of operation and the entire Nigerian Federation.
There is no one size. There is no one way of doing disaster management in any country. There will always be a Nigerian solution, a Nigerian way of doing emergency management. Indeed, there'll be a state way within Nigeria of doing certain things.
Then, in a more practical way, in this slide, I'm basically saying that there are many organizations who need to practice situational awareness. So different people in their different roles get together and they need to make sure that they've understood a developing situation. Now, one of the ways we practice this in our master's course is to give everyone a sheet of paper and say, right, that's the situation. Now discuss the situation and make decisions and communicate. That's a very simple way to do it. A lot of exercises are done like that. Give everybody the same information, either on paper or on video. Now we all know what's going on. Now make decisions. What we want to do is to move people into a more complex scenario where actually the information supporting the full details is given in bits and pieces to different people. So we separate out all the key information, and some people get some of it and some people get other parts of it. And unless everybody talks together, we don't get the whole picture. And that's that second bottom half of the diagram. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we do that shortly. We want to make sure that our master students and our private sector clients are able to go into any company, private sector company, or even government sector, and make sure that the key people who have got roles in a crisis know what they're going to do. Too often, the people who are in senior leadership positions, their CVs say that they are highly experienced and ready to do this particular role. But changing from their senior management team role to a crisis management team role needs to be practiced. And that's one of the key parts of the Masters, which we train people how to do, we train them how to write the exercises. And not only that they understand what their role is, but in this slide, it says